Welcome back to the BackCountry Pa Podcast. You got myself, Cody. On this one was a cool one. I've been looking forward to having these guys on, been playing with having them on for a while now. Just haven't never wore their camo or anything like that, and I found that camo very interesting. And they came to the outdoor show in February, and I actually bought their gear. Tried it on, wore it in February in the cold, which we talk about in this episode here actually, and it's phenomenal. It fits good. It blends in well. Snuck up to like 20 yards of some deer. Actually, a bachelor group of buck was walking right up to them, and they didn't blow until I literally pretty much made them blow, or the wind switched and went to them. But this one was a great episode talking about camo, talking about the importance of it, why theirs is different, and works a little better than any other camo out there. In my opinion, honestly, it just fits and it works better for the terrain. The one I have, it's a lighter one, and it blends in very well when it's like foggy, that cloudy type material. And they also have a darker color that I don't think they're making anymore. It's the same type camo, just a darker color. And it actually, it works better in the sun, in the shade here in the big woods of Pennsylvania. Really love the camo. Code of Silence is the name of the brand. On this one, we had Jaime and Ev on the podcast to talk all about their brand, how it came about, why it came about, because they were in Cabela's for a while doing camo for them, working with Cabela's. Everything was good, and then they just felt like there was something missing in the camo aspect of things. So they went down this road, and it was just a great conversation. It was smooth. There's some important stuff in this that isn't just about camo, but about hunting in general, and about really the importance of it. Like the light reflection was a big thing that I wanted to cover in this episode, but we had them on to cover all that. But want to remind you guys that June 14th, we are going to have a booth at the Lebanon Indoor Archery Bigfoot Festival here in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. We'll be doing a giveaway. I have an XOP Rubicon stand with 4X2s, the seat cushion, the Gamma Pack. You're going to get an orange hat, a beanie, and Deer Hunter synthetic scrape mix. And then also you're going to get a Camp Co. Euro mount. So you're going to get all that, but you got to come, you got to enter, you got to be there in person, you got to fill it out in person, you got to be subscribed to our YouTube channel to be entered to win. There might be I might think of another way to actually enter, but you still got to be there. It has to be either you're there or you can't be entered. That's the only way you can enter. And we're going to be doing podcasts there. We're going to be doing podcasts with people who want to come sit down at the podcast, want to share their story from this past season, maybe share a little story from deer camp way back when they first got in hunting, take it that route, or fishing story. I'm not huge into fishing, but if you have a good fishing story, we'll gladly listen to it. It's going to be fun. Going to be fun to shake hands, meet some people. I might have my bow back by then too, with some new strings. So I might go and shoot my bow a little bit in the range there. But hopefully you guys come out and meet us. We're also going to have decals, little stickers there as well. You can get a 3-pack for $4. We might do actually at the show a 3-pack for $3. And then that's you get 3 decals. One's the Measure the Memories, the BackCountry logo, and the Don't Shame the Game logo that we had made a couple years ago. But also, want to remind you guys, check out our partners. Check out the description of the podcast for all the partners. XOP, who this podcast is presented by, they're the title sponsor of this episode. They have some cool stuff coming out. Not going to lie, they have some really cool stuff coming out, which we have a podcast that was recorded with Brock that'll be dropping the same exact day as the new Prox will drop, which is June 25th, 2025. So lots of new stuff coming. Go check them out. If you want your deer aged or any animal aged, because we're coming up on the season, might as well stock up on getting your deer aged. Go to deerage.com or Wildlife Labs on Instagram and use our code. It'll get you 10% off. The code will be in the description of this podcast here. So go check them out. Go save some money. Help us get a little bit of money here. And we have some really cool episodes coming up. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and follow us and subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Remember to give us a rating and a review. Remember to keep hunting, keep fishing, and always enjoy the freaking process. See ya.
This is important, not whether you buy Code of Silence or not. I think it's important as a hunter.
Yeah.
This is an absolute fact. Your eyes do not see. Deer's eyes do not see. Their brain does. You take in, as a human being, you take in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of more images subconsciously than you ever make yourself study and become aware of. And it's no different in the deer. If deer walk through the woods having to study every object, try to find the hunter or find the coyote or find the bobcat, they'd starve to death. They rely on their brain to find exceptions. That's why they see movement. That's why, and the exception can be color. It can be light reflectance, total visual signature. It can be an object, as you said earlier, standing on a silhouette of a tree, but somehow it has been filtered by the brain. It's called sensory filtering. People call it sensory gating. I learned about this late in Code of Silence, and then no pun intended, the light went off with me. A group of police snipers in Denver called us up and said, "Man, we love your camo. Would you build it for us?" I'm like, it may be exactly opposite of what you need. If you don't want to get noticed, in a reflective world, you might be better off to have highly reflective clothing because you're a non-exception at that point.
Because you won't stand out. That's exactly the norm. Yep.
And so the reason absorption works in the woods is because everything else around it absorbs light.
Yep.
Buying things online is like very risky to do. So that's why when you came to the outdoor show, I was like, I have to go out and actually try it on before I buy it. Because I've been burnt before by buying camo online. It's like, it doesn't fit how it's supposed to. And I was like, man, there's certain things
with people trying to go through that whole thing, especially when you have your own ideas of how you want it to fit or layer underneath it, or it's so funny. I could talk to the same guy that even doesn't want to layer underneath a certain garment, but one guy I really like a tight fit. I just don't want anything to interfere with my bow or think like it does, so I'd rather, or think that it's going to, so I just want it as tight as can be. And you talk to the next guy and he's like, "No, I hate that. It's all about freedom of movement,"
Yep.
And it's like, okay, and trying to decide which one of those two guys you have is a little bit of a challenge at times. But yeah, I'm kind of that tight archery guy. I'd rather have it too tight than too loose for sure.
When I first started out, it was always like I had the baggiest stuff ever. Like it was always just so baggy, like my pants. Like I think no, actually those ripped last spring.
Those the ones that ripped.
Those were the ripped ones.
But you were so upset. He was so upset.
I was very upset. Those were nostalgic pants, But I walked over one log that was a little too high and it ripped a little too much. So, but they were very old. But those were also like extremely baggy, like hand-me-downs from my dad to me, from when I first got into it at the age of 12, and they fit me up until I'm 29.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm 30, but they ripped when I was 29.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, hold on. We're not that different. They're not 2 years in the difference in age here.
After 25, you stop counting, right?
Oh, sort of. Your buddies don't. When you're younger, your younger buddies don't stop counting. They're like, you're an old fart, dude.
Age is just a number. I just told my wife that. She just had her birthday yesterday. I was like, age is just a number.
Yeah.
Welcome to the BackCountry Pa Podcast, Ev and Jaime, from Code of Silence.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Really excited to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you want to introduce yourself to us and the listeners, baby? I want to hear mostly how you got into hunting. Since we're going to be talking about camo in this one, I want to hear about what kind of camo you were running when you first got into hunting. If you can remember.
I'll love to tell my story. I'll let Jaime go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go first.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest. I grew up as a city guy. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, which is hunting was never in my family. I never learned that way until I moved out west. Met my husband. He's the one who introduced me into the outdoors. So it's kind of funny that I had to move out west to realize that Ohio is a really good state for big deer. It's like, no, I wish I knew that, but
we all want to go back there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So been hunting for probably close to 13 years now. I think that's how long I've been out here. So very grateful that I had someone who, was welcoming in a way to where this door opened for me. Even though it was later in my life, like I'm very grateful to have been, or at least have this exposure into the outdoors. So it's a big part of my life now. I'm a big bow hunter. I love recreational shooting too. And this is all stuff I never really grew up with. So when you asked the question of the camo that I used, it was hand-me-down stuff from friends at Cabela's. Really, when I started my outdoor career at Cabela's, because Cabela's corporate is in Sidney, Nebraska, which is super close to where I live. And Ed will tell his story in a bit. But
Sure.
Being the new gal, just learning how to hunt. And in my beginning career, actually, that's where I met Ev. And a lot of I worked specifically in hunting apparel at the time. So I was able to get camo pretty easily. And it was really Cabela's branded camo is what I started with. So, yeah.
It's cool. Yeah. Jaime has come a long ways. I'll speak a little bit for her. She's, for no longer than, she's been in a long time, but, by some people's standards like mine, I've been around a long time. 14, 15 years is a short period of time, but she's a real deal. She really is. So.
Cool.
She's not just a participant; she's an enthusiast and lethal in her own way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
So Jaime, the camo, back then, I mean that's 14 plus years ago. So what kind of camo? Like, was it the leaf pattern that Cabela's was running originally?
It was actually Outfitter. Outfitter, and then at the time was actually one of his camos. It was Zones camo. So, Yep. So those were the camo patterns that I wore. I mean. It was the Cabela's branded one. So it was Outfitter and then Zones. Yeah.
I don't remember that stuff.
Yeah.
I can't say. I have the same.
It was close to when I started, but I don't think my dad ever wore.
No.
I don't think my dad ever wore Cabela's stuff. I forget what he really wore. It was mostly he had a bunch of habit stuff. Yep. And that's what I grew up on is habit stuff. That's primarily what we used. And just real tree stuff. That's pretty much what he was using.
Yep.
So I'm not familiar with that stuff at all.
Kmart blue light special.
Oh, Walmart. Yeah.
Kmart, that's I still have the same winter jacket that I've had since high school, and I'm returning 32 this year. So I've had that for a while, and surprisingly still fit. I mean, if it fits perfectly fine now. So I'm really I wish we took more pictures back then, because I want to know how big this jacket actually was on me growing up, because I know I've gotten bigger since I'm not the same size.
That's so funny.
I had this really big orange jacket that I think would still fit me to this day, but it was down to my knees when I was 12. It was massive, and I had
you gotta find it.
Multiple pictures in my photo album of just of that jacket with multiple doe down in front of me. That was was a doe killer.
Nice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your experience, I mean, there's camo patterns that I know none of us have heard of back in your day. But from the beginning of time.
Where do I start?
But yeah, where do you start?
Go back to the age is just a number.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I mean, I can tell my own story about camouflage growing up and how it, affected my hunting. My first camouflage garment I ever received was actually a Cabela's garment, which was ironic a little bit. And I got that garment in 1981. And it was so I'm sure some people would remember Bud Grant, or still remember Bud Grant, who was the famous long-term coach of the Vikings. And Cabela's hired him because of some of the Minnesota roots of the Cabela's executives to endorse what they called the Bud Grant parka, which was one of the first Gore-Tex garments ever. And I got one of those for Christmas when I was still in high school. And back then you did not ever think about, at least I didn't, and none of my friends ever thought about owning a set of camouflage.
Right.
You just you happen to have a coat, and that was enough. And I still have that coat today, the same one. And it was a big deal. I mean, I was the dude. But back then it's a what we would call a World War II pattern. And even that camouflage, and then a couple other, military camouflages, tiger stripe, became popular soon after that, and then Woodland, which was also a military camouflage. So it was all about military camouflages back then. In fact, if I showed you a picture of the first deer, fast forward, I was pretty much hunting birds and that type of game back then in the 80s. And then I got interested in bow hunting in the mid 80s. Got my first bow in 1984 or 5, and I have a picture of me with the first deer, and I still have a universal camo outfit on, which is a coverall that I got at Walmart, and I paid $14.95 for it. I can still remember that, and that was a big purchase. But if you see that picture of me, I have with that first deer, I've got white tennis shoes and that camo coverall, and then a brown hat or something, and was just happy to have something that was more than just a top, but so fast forward just a little bit more, and I'm not patting myself on the back at all, but because of my role at Cabela's and talking to the Mossy Oaks and the Tree Bark, who, was probably the founder of modern camouflage, Tree Bark, really, even though Mossy Oak and Realtree are so famous. Tree Bark was the big deal in the 80s and 90s. But anyway, got to know all those companies, saw them all. They all came to my door, and I probably have a bigger, longer term perspective on the evolution of camouflage than probably anyone in the world, actually.
Sure.
So,
I feel like you saw it from like the origination of it, kind of. I'm not saying I'm not bringing up the age thing, I'm not.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, just say like
you were there at the beginning.
I'll fight back.
To now,
I carried a 60-pound pack across the mountains of Alaska last year for about 40 miles. So, it's like you say, age is just a number, and I'm pretty spry for the number of sunrises I've seen. But anyway, you just see a lot in 30 years of sitting at Cabela's designing and buying camo.
Well, the Tree Bark, like as soon as you said that, I can vividly remember a picture of my dad with a Tree Bark camo, like with a deer, with his I have his old original bow that he has that that thing shoots dead on. Like he gave it to me and I'm shooting out back. I'm like, man, at 30 yards, like a deer would be dead with this thing. It has the old aluminum arrows, the muzzies on the front of it. Like, you know what? This is a good backup bow just in case. But yeah, I remember the Tree Bark that he had. And I think he probably still has some like that. I personally like that Tree Bark camo. Like kind of just, it looks cool. It's nostalgic. And I love that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, it's actually had a little bit of a, resurgence with all the retro, trends in camouflage, and back to the original Mossy Oak bottomland and the original Realtree patterns without the leaves, which is really going back in the Realtree history. But Tree Bark's the same way, and in fact, I'm sure some of the Tree Bark garments and stuff I've hung on to, even the Realtree Mossy Oak, they probably tripled in value on eBay now, so yeah, they might, you try it out. But yeah, the old school stuff is something that I think will always be, no matter what kind of camo you run. Like it's always something you'd want to break out once in a while for just like a nostalgic thing, like late season hunting with a muzzleloader, or maybe early season with the bow, or if you go on a recurve, something like that. Like just take it back. And not to take lead on the conversation, but it's really interesting as we talk about the perspective over the really 3 decades of me, seeing a lot of camo and designing a lot of camo and products and everything else. But as this relates to where we're at with Code of Silence and some of the light reflectants, I would tell you that some of those, well, most of them for that matter, the fabrications in the 80s and 90s were almost completely limited to organic fabrics. They were cottons, cotton polys, they were wools. Polyester wasn't really making its debut yet in hunting. And those, even in our testing and even in general customer feedback, they would tell you that, oh, my grandpa, never could get seen in his old wool garments, or there's nothing like the original double bull blinds. Well, all those technologies, all those products were built from basic organic fabrics. And so just, as things move forward, they actually move backwards, in our opinion, in terms of concealment side of things.
Yep.
Yeah, camouflage got more detailed and fabrics got more technical in terms of maybe wicking and some things like that. So there were some gains, but in terms of light reflectance and actually mimicking the woods completely from a spectral signature, we went backwards. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, more later, but some of the light, no pun intended, some of the lights kind of went off with us as we talked in some of the research projects of what people were really after, particularly in blinds. I heard at Cabela's in a long research project, and this guy came to me, said, "Hey, all of our customers are demanding that our upper end blinds go back to polycot." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's old school." And like, "No, all the deer and turkey are way less afraid of the double bowl blinds of the old days and stuff like that." And there was just a lot of perspectives like that really led us to understand that, holy cow, there's a lot of potential in just looking back at what really worked and why it worked and implementing those things in Code of Silence. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And we're definitely going to dive into the light aspect thing. So I think not a lot of, I personally, from all the camo that I've looked at, like no one really talks about that. They talk about mostly, the warmth, the water resistant, wind resistant, layering, that kind of stuff they talk about, or merino wool, which you guys have wool in yours. So we'll get into that. But before we do that, can we hear how Code of Silence started? Like what was the I guess the brainchild of it? Like what happened? Like what clicked in your head? Like, okay, I have something here.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. So anyway, I had left Cabela's in 2017, right before Bass Pro bought Cabela's, and it wasn't because of that. I just had a long career, and things were changing, and just wanted to go off and do something different. And so I left Cabela's on great terms and great friends there and everything else, and did a few different things, and always in the back of my mind wanted to create something unique to myself, just with everything I've learned, super avid outdoorsman. And so I kind of had that, that kind of yearning to go off and do something, but really never the motivation. And there was about 4 or 5 different things going on that kind of pushed me over the edge. I was actually, I'm super avid antelope hunter, and I was going back to the blind conversation. I've put out this antelope blind. I'll spare you the details, and got to watch these really young antelope react to this fresh blind that I just put out that really had no reason to be afraid of a blind. It was in a field of 100, round bales. They weren't very afraid of anything, and got to watch them from afar freak out to this blind. Same time I was trying to kill a deer that was probably the toughest deer to get to walk past you. For visual reasons, that deer would pick me off no matter what I did. If I was hanging and hunting and sitting 30 feet in a tree and doing everything perfectly right, and that deer would see me no matter what. And then about the same time, I was wearing some old school kind of Cabela's wool clothing, and had been sitting on this log, taking a break after like 5 days of hitting it hard, and had a young deer literally walk almost where I could touch the deer, and he couldn't, and he never reacted to me, never did. And it was almost like I was a ghost. And so anyway, I'm sitting here watching antelope freak out from highly reflective blinds. I have no reason to even be scared. You could drive up next to in a pickup 50 yards away, take pictures of them, and they'd never quit eating. Have a freakishly smart deer that I can't even get within 100 yards of me when I'm wearing the most expensive, kind of designer camo out there in the world. And then I'm wearing my old school stuff, and I'm getting deer to walk by 3 yards away. And then going, I still don't even have a go-to garment that fits right. It's warm, quiet. And if there's anything close to fitting my needs, it costs me damn near a month's paycheck. So I'm like, I got the know-how, I got the contacts, probably don't have to have my kids are through college, and I don't have to have a paycheck tomorrow to pay the light bills, and I've got an idea here, and what the heck, it's America. Let's go for it. So,
so
sorry to go off, but
No.
that's about how it happened.
Yeah.
And
that was perfect. I mean, because I think a lot of people resonate with what you're saying about like, you don't have that true fit, and you don't want to drop like a ton of money because you buy the most expensive thing. It'll fit you right.
Yeah.
But it won't be good camo for where you're hunting. Like in my eyes, like it won't be, that's my words there. It won't be good for the area you're hunting. Like it'll be the light, all this kind of stuff. It won't blend in with your surroundings. And then you buy like not the cheapest stuff, but like a more affordable brand, and it doesn't fit nearly as well as the more expensive stuff. So it's like, there's no happy medium there. And then enter Code of Silence.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I mean, the 30 years of Cabela's, and had some great experiences and some great mentors, both, directly and indirectly. And Jim Cabela, early days, even up to the end, I kind of figured it out after a while, but if I got my butt chewed at all, it was as much for charging too much as it was for charging, margin, we had to make money, but first and foremost, we were going to offer a great value. And I can show you catalogs that from 1991 to 1994, even though we were selling more product, our prices actually dropped because we were able to, find manufacturing efficiencies and leverage volumes. And we pass that on to the consumer. And some people would give Cabela as a bad rap as a big company, but I would fight that really, really hard. We found ways to build stuff and pass on those savings. And again, if I got my butt chewed, his prices were too high, the quality wasn't right, fit wasn't right. It was all about making stuff better and more, making better products and making them more affordable, 24/7, 365.
So when you're out in the field, when you're getting, you're not able to get on the antelope, you're not able to get in that deer that you want to get, and you think of starting like a camo company and doing all this, making garments, how do you come up with that? Like, how do you come up with a design? How do you, like, what's the process for that? Because for us looking in, it's like, okay, well, you just like take a picture of something, you send it off like, hey, I want it to match this.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Are you talking about the camo, or are you
Yeah.
talking about the garment design? Oh, great question.
Camo and the pattern.
Yeah.
Jamie, you want to cover that? I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, it's great. I'll start with the design aspect. So that's what's really unique about this team is we know what works and what doesn't. And there are a lot of brands and companies in all different industries. That's like, hey, I want this, go build this, right? And that's not how we build things. Instead, it's finding problems or tweaks that we want to incorporate because we feel like that's solving a customer need. We have internal design. We have a really, really, I call it kind of a beautiful mind, nerdy guy who's very technical. So that's also why this works really well, is because he naturally
blessing and the curse. So, yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. But all that design stuff comes from us. And we partner with people that we've worked with that helps bring what we're envisioning with problem-solving products to life. And as he mentioned, the relationships that we have with manufacturers, with, stateside designers, like we're able to build quality product, but also product that's innovative, unique, and solves those buckets of fast turnaround, efficiency in creating, and passing on savings. Yeah,
because it's like I said, I bought stuff at the Great American Outdoor Show, and then after buying that, I was like, okay, I need to get something else now. So then I went to your guys' outlet you had, and I bought one of the, it's the darker fleece pullover. And I was like, that would be good for like a kind of like a mid layer under it. So, I did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And like I told Jamie on the phone the other day when we talked about doing the podcast, I went out, and it was when we had that bad snow in February here in PA here. And it was like we had I think 5 inches. It was like ice over top of it, and there was wind chills, and there was 20 degrees with like 50-mile-per-hour winds. I was like, it's my only day I can go out and scout and like check my cameras, make sure they're actually still going. And I wore that thing, and I didn't feel a single like wind, a little bit of wind through there at all. Like, I was very impressed by it. So I was like, this stuff is a high quality stuff with how it's, because I walked 10 miles that day and I didn't break a sweat and nothing like that. And I was warm. Like, my face was cold, but no, that's another story. Obviously didn't wear a face shield. But yeah, it was amazing. So how did you decide what to put with this jacket, how to make it like with the product you wanted to use, and to still stay warm and stay in budget and not be overly expensive and be, to reach a normal average hunter like us?
I think a lot of it really started from when I just, joined Code of Silence. You guys, were working, finalizing and doing the pattern.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it,
Yeah.
would you say like the pattern and the concealment story, obviously silence, warmth, concealment, that's our top three. And we can, chat about that. But I'd say the pattern has a pretty unique story in how that came about.
It does. Yeah. And it wasn't my first camo. I mean,
Right, yeah.
at Cabela's and did a lot of our own camos. Some of them I'm really proud of. Some of them I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking that day, honestly, but you kind of have to go back and see where everyone else is at too. But it was funny. It took a whole completely different approach, and nothing against anyone, because there's some great camouflages out there. I mean, amazing amount of time and effort and even resources and, staffs that are involved with designing camo. But to my knowledge, 99% of them are art. They say, oh, it's computer generated, and okay, sort of, maybe. But it's usually someone wanting, I want to put a leaf here and there's a branch there. And we really said, this shouldn't be Ev's camo. This should be nature's camo, which is a little cliche. Everyone says, oh, this, nature built this. Like, well, you looked at nature and you drew it how you thought nature was. And so what we did was try to stay a little bit more objective. And we went and looked at 100 trees of 5 different species in 6 different states. We tried to pick some states that were all around and say, here, what's the main hardwood stories? And well, first, let me back up. We first did 100 people that we knew and said, what is your average tree stand height? And we compiled that information, and it came out to be 14.8 feet. 13.8 feet. I'm trying to get this.
I think on the video.
14.8 feet.
Yep.
And so anyway, and put a 6-foot human in that, right? And center mass at 3 feet, you end up with 17.8. So then we looked at the 100 trees I just talked about at that 17.8 foot mark and said, what is the average branch size and what is the average branch density? And believe me, there's some telephone poles out there, and there's some apple trees out there, but the average of that branch size and that branch density drove the overall componentry in the powder.
Yep.
And so it is as universal in our minds. This is universal to the average tree stand placement and the average tree you're going to find yourself in as you can get, at least in conventional means. Then the colors were, because, I won't fast forward too much, but we knit everything. We do not print any fabrics, and that lowers the synthetics. It increases texture, and it lowers the amount of ink and that not just synthetic fibers, but also synthetic additives.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in most jacquard techniques, you're limited to either 3 or 4 colors. So the color selection got easier. You just said, okay, what's the average light color found in those same hardwood trees? What's the average dark color? And then if you divide that middle up 3 times and take those two common denominators between those 3, and there's your 4 colors, and away you go. And so you start knitting those same 4 colors in the same pattern, and in as much of an organic bland as you can get. I mean, there's still a lot of dynamics, and I'm sorry to go crazy here, but you know, we would love to be able to build things 100% wool, and but from a washability standpoint, from a durability standpoint, just an overall practicality, it gets hard. And so find a balance of everything you want to have in that fabric that you can get and still make it functional. So it's a little bit of just process elimination, you know, to be honest with you. And but you throw all those in the hopper, and then you get it out and you get your first fabric and you throw it up against a tree and you go, wow. And not just that it at a glance, but just every light condition, every height, whether it's laying on the ground, whether it's laying on the bark, whether it's up, it's just the dullness, the naturalness, the neutrality of it, I guess, if you will. It's just, you know, there's other people say the science of nothing, and I'm like, well, you got to see what nothing really looks like, because you haven't seen it yet. So
yeah,
jeez,
so that's a lot of science behind the camo. Like,
just
that's
in the camo,
because
but I agree, and thank you. But you say it's like when you do it all, you're like, well, how else would you do it?
Right.
Well, that's for me. It's like,
you know,
when people say like, oh, I remember hearing one guy say, like, I take a square piece of what I want to do, I'm drawing it out, and then but that square piece has to match up to another square piece. Like, it has, like, that's how I thought camo was made, and I think that's how the majority of it's made. But then, like you said, you guys went a completely different route of how you want to do things, and like this may sound bad, but it's like this, like, you look at this and then compared to other camo, it's like it's boring, but it's amazing at the same time. Right?
The word we use a lot is dullness, and I'm like, that's a really bad marketing term. It's not a very like sexy word, dullness.
No.
That is
we look like we've been washed 100 times.
It's so dull, you'll love it.
Yes. We're gonna have a new slogan by the end of this episode.
There you go. Help us with that. But
I mean, like, looking at the stuff behind you too, it's like you go out in nature and you just look at everything. Like in the fall time, nature's so detailed, yet it all blends together. I feel like other camo companies, they're too detailed that it stands out when you're up in a tree. You're not actually blending in. Your stuff is bland, you know, but there's enough.
Thank you.
But there's enough. Yeah, no. I feel like I'm insulting. I feel like I'm insulting you, but you're just
can
like,
I name the title of it?
No,
Code of Silence is bland.
Code of Silence is bland. That's going to be. Oh, you want to talk about a clickbait title for this episode? Code of Silence is bland. But it's like there's enough detail with your stuff that it will blend in with the detail of nature.
Yeah.
That it's not vibrant, and it's not standing out. It's not camo that stands out.
It's interesting because just by the basic process and sort of the limitations of the processes we chose to create the dullness, you by default end up with the quietest stuff in the world too.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know, really? I mean, they kind of, you know, mutually complement each other. But you know, if you just said, oh, I don't care what it looks like, forget the camo, I don't even care, just make it tan, you'd still go do exactly what we just said in jacquard knitting it and building that texture and using natural components to make the quietest thing in the world. Yeah, that's what's like, really? I mean, you just, you know, you don't usually get that with anything. There's always usually like, man, if I build it, the raincoat's at 100% waterproof, it's going to be noisier than heck, you know, or it's going to be, you know, super expensive. In this case, it's like, no, in getting what we wanted over here, we got what we wanted over there.
Well, that's one thing, like I would say, I mean, it's still a big thing. Like solids is a big thing that people use. I mean, that's like, even in Nebraska where you guys are from, a lot of people use solids because they want to stalk on antelope or deer or whatever, right out there.
Yep.
I don't know. I can't stalk here in PA. There's no way I can do it. Like, I can do it in the off season when deer don't expect anyone to be in the woods, I can do it then, but that's it. But this here, like in comparison to solids, I feel like this is very comparable to solids because of how it's made and how it like blends in with the surroundings. Like, cause I wore this on a sunny day, this darker one on a sunny day, which do you guys make this pattern anymore? The darker one?
So it's the same pattern, but
It's the same pattern, but it's in a different format.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then I wore this on a sunny day and it was amazing. Like I found myself looking down and like it blends in with like the sun hitting me as well as the shadows hitting me. Like the where this is the light color is put and where the dark color is put, it matches up perfectly for where like normal shadows would be in the woods. That was the thing that amazed me.
Yeah.
And then I wore this one, the fair. What is it? The
fair winds.
fair.
Yeah. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
I wore this one on a overcast day with a little bit of drizzle, and it was amazing how well it, like blended in with the surroundings. Where it was like the dark leaves, dark sky. I walked up to a group of four shed buck within 20 yards, and they didn't know what I was.
Mhm.
Like that was, and I was standing between Laurel and them, like trying to walk up to them. I was walking up to them, and they still were just staring at me.
Yep.
As like I was just right there. Like that's what truly amazed me about the camo. Like, and I don't want people to be like, "Oh, he's just talking because he doesn't want the closet." No, because it's the first camo that I can say that it actually happened.
Yeah.
Like, that's what amazed me about it.
And that's a consistent story.
It
It is
is.
one where
Yeah.
like, and it'll take time to catch on.
Mhm.
It'll take time for people to like believe it, but it's when people use it,
Hundreds
the same,
of people.
like, holy crap,
And
they saw right through me.
And I didn't plan this comment out, and I have to think it through. But have we ever had anyone say your camo sucks?
No.
I don't think I've had a single negative comment
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. Honestly, there's
Now that I
nothing.
think about it, I never really thought about that. I thought about how many piles of positive comments, but if you look at I don't think it's a single one. I don't think anyone's ever said it's bad.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of it too, I know a lot of it really pertains into this light absorbency story. That's what's
It really does.
Yeah.
And-
So yeah, it's like you can, while, you heard the science behind the pattern, colors, textures, all that. It's really the light absorbency side and the fabrics that we choose is why it makes really, no matter like the pattern, why that blends in is because it is not reflective.
Yeah. And so before we get into the light part of it,
Sure.
I want to cover the wind versus waterproof, all that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
let's talk about that a little bit with this camo as well, because I think that's people really care about that. Obviously, like
For sure.
they don't want to be out there and be caught in the rain and then they get drenched, but yet the wind's good and all that kind of stuff. So let's hear about that a little bit of how how water resistant, because like I said, I was out in a little bit of drizzle. Obviously, it wasn't getting on me, but it's a little bit of drizzle wasn't bad. I was walking through Laurel, not really anything was getting on me, and that holds water a lot.
Yep.
And so how water resistant is it and how wind resistant is it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's a great question. And we get it a lot, obviously,
Yeah.
and I'm, again, not trying to, pat ourselves on the back at all. There's probably no one in the world that has built more waterproof gear and hunting gear than the people you're talking to right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have built, hundreds and hundreds of the most, expedition level, Alaska level, down to basic Joe waterproof gear. It is not hard to do, and we're looking at it. There's ways we can take our technology into waterproof. You start to sacrifice some noise, et cetera, like that. And you also start to sacrifice some breathability, which breathability to us is needs to be considered more in thermal efficiency. It's why you get cold in rubber boots. It really is. Even when you're stationary, your body needs to breathe, and it's really hard to stay on stand in stationary conditions with a non-breathable coat. And same time you look at it and you go, well, we started out as a primarily a cold weather brand. and an extreme cold weather brand too, where if there is moisture around, it's probably in the form of snow, where waterproofness isn't as critical as some water resistance. So it's like, well, we want to make extreme cold weather garments. We want to make extreme quietness. People don't really need waterproofness in the environments we're building this stuff for right now. And we want to build more breathable garments. So therefore we kind of went the direction we did. And at the same time, and I'm sure some people will pick up in their seats a little bit and go, I hunt in the rain all the time. Good for you. And, but there's a lot of people that just, choose to stay home when it's raining because they're burning stand, not because they're not tough enough. It's just burning stands. The deer aren't moving. And so, I would guess that less than 10% of hunting is done in rain overall.
Look at you. He's part of that 10%.
I'm gloating on the inside.
He is right now. He shot his buck this year in a downpour.
Good for you.
Nice.
And I shot
awesome.
some believe me, I hunt in the rain too. I just, when we couldn't really have it both ways. We couldn't build, non-breathable gear that was noisier than what we were trying to do with Code of Silence. And so it was really the starting point. And we'll have some waterproof gear. Yeah. In fact, you'd laugh. Some of the fabrics we saw that I just got in the other day, and you look at it and you go, if we introduce this as rainwear, people would just like roll their eyes and go, you did what? I mean, it is like, not that it wouldn't, as a silhouette and as a functionality, it's just the same as everybody else, but it's basically like merino rainwear. And you're like, it doesn't sound like something you're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't sound like you should be wearing it in the rain.
Yeah. And it's like super packable too. And I don't give up all my secrets, but anyway, it's like,
I don't want to edit too much out.
It's like we can do it, but I would almost challenge anybody that, that has a hard time staying warm on stand, which there's a lot of people that do, to consider breathability as at least part of the solution. And it's really hard to solve that problem if you're too overly focused on waterproof. Yeah. I'll just say that.
The breathability part is huge. Like I bought camo before that wasn't breathable. Like I went out with it for turkey and it was like, it wasn't letting me breathe at all. Like it wasn't that hot. I was like 62 maybe outside. So like this stuff, it was light, both pants and top. And I was walking, I was like, man, this is just, I'm burning up. Like I can't do this. Like, and that's the breathability is 100% is very important. And that's,
And you do that in cold weather and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Deer's going to smell you right away.
You'll freeze. That's the biggest thing too. Yeah. Like, and to Ev's point, the hardest part, like when you think of rainwear, you think of laminated fabrics that are 100%, right? Waterproof, but those don't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So would you rather have 100% waterproof with besides you, the guy who's out hunting in a monsoon, or would you rather have some, water resistance? And we'll talk about windproofness in a second, but it's quiet and that breathability allows you to stay warmer. What would you rather have? Right?
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
And to his point, like we're trying to solve the need and the ask of people like you that want that 100% waterproof, but still are you going to get the concealment story that, non-reflective type gear, and is it still going to breathe, and is it going to be quiet? Like all those
quiet
things.
Being the hardest one. Especially in extreme cold weather.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think
quietness with a laminate is different than 0 degree quietness with a laminate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also like for people like me who aren't, maybe I shouldn't have went out that day. Right. It was not like it was smart in the end, but if I didn't see anything, or like, then it'd be like, oh man, I shouldn't have went out. But the stuff I was wearing, going back to breathability, it was not like, it was a heavy jacket, and I had had a mid layer on, then I just had a t-shirt on underneath. So like, but I was hot. Like it was like, luckily I didn't walk too far. Like I wasn't going as far as I originally planned, but like it was hot. Like I got hot after a while, but
And that's the other thing from an education standpoint. I learned to like the hard way, and just you kind of learn the hard way once you freeze, right? Like, so I hunt often with my husband, and with muzzleloader hunting too. We mostly do bow hunting, but in muzzleloader hunting, I'm walking in my older gear that I used to wear, and he's wanting to get there fast, right? Like, so, and I'm like trying to say,
Gary?
Yeah, what? Surprise.
Yeah.
And like, so he's like, yep. So we make it to where we need to be, right? So we can scout and kind of then make our play. By the time we get there, I'm already sweaty. I'm like, why did we just do this? So then the rest of the time you freeze, right? Well, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to carry your stuff in, or if you're going to do it, get there a little bit earlier. So you're not rushing, and then all of a sudden you're sweaty and then you freeze. Like, so there is a balance, and it's a understanding that if you sweat, you're done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally, and I say this a lot, and it's not fully accurate, but there's no sliding scale where if you if you get just a little wet, you're going to get a little cold. If you get really wet, I'm talking about perspiration buildup when you're walking in, or whatever. If you get really wet, you're going to get really cold, or just a little wet, you're going to get. It's not about reducing moisture; it's about eliminating it. It really is. And the difference when you have zero perspiration buildup versus a little bit is night and day. And we really try to, find a way for people to have zero perspiration and zero moisture buildup. So
this guy sweats a lot,
dude. I sweat. Oh, I have yet to. I'll never master it. I don't care.
I had to put the stuff on in the studio because he never had it on before, and he was like, "Oh man, if I had this on, I'm gonna sweat like a pig."
Oh yeah, every rifle doesn't matter. Rifle season, it's 15 degrees out. There's snow on the ground. I'm walking up the mountain in a t-shirt because I'm going to be. I'm still sweating.
That's what you should do. Yeah. And a lot of our stuff.
I still sweat.
That's
it's so bad, and I'm like, I have yet to just master that. I don't think I ever will, to be honest. I'm trying, but it doesn't work out so well for me.
Yeah.
So I'm one of the problems.
But I mean, like, if it's super cold where it just, there's zero tolerance for moisture, just based on the climate. And I might change out.
Yeah. Bring a spare shirt.
And
switch out.
Just because you're like, oh, I don't feel that wet. But again, everything matters. And, just a little bit's not good enough. Just change out.
Yeah. Even socks too. I think
Yeah, everybody can really relate. It's easier to talk about with boots, and just a little bit of sweat in your boots. And I mean, it's the clock starts ticking as soon as you get in the stand. It's like,
and you're done.
I got an hour or 2 hours, but I'm going home here shortly. So,
well, like when we had our ruck camp up at his cabin, I think it was it the last day? I went up and I got surrounded by deer before I even got set up in my tree stand.
Yeah,
like I was
almost standing on the ground. He's like, "What do I do?"
What do I do?
It's right before daylight, right?
The sun's just about, I can see it coming up over the mountain behind me. And like, I'm just standing there with the GoPro on, and I'm like, I'm literally in my base layers right now. And I can't get in this tree because I can hear deer walking all around me. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get set up.
Yeah.
So,
it's it
is.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. It's a good problem to have. I mean, if I had a good tree to set up, and that would be even better to have. But
yeah, your tree selection. I mean, you've learned
probably one of the worst.
His tree selection, like me and my sweating problem, is as bad as his tree selection problem because
I love the self-awareness you guys have, though.
Dude, the tree selection, we'll get along fine. I'm the same way.
It's not good. Like I think this year when I've been scouting my postseason scouting, I've been picking out trees, like possible trees to set up in. Now, when it comes to season, if I remember where they are, or if I pick the right one when it's dark out, I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to get in the right one, but I'll be up in a tree somewhere.
Yeah,
near the tree.
Are you saddle hunting then? Is that what you're doing?
What was that?
Are you saddle hunting then?
So I hybrid. So I do a stand with a saddle because I don't like the small platforms. Yeah. So I'd rather use like a tree stand and just face it. And then with XOP, like I like how their pad can go on the back of it. So I can just rest my knee on the seat when it's folded up. But I mean, I like their really light stands. Yeah. It's fantastic. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys saddle, or are you mostly just?
I actually, don't judge me. I like ladder stands now just because like it's so easy to go up and down. But hang on stands usually what I do. I have not gotten into saddle hunting.
Yeah.
You have, and
all of the above.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really there's a new climber coming out, but like I really cannot wait to use a climber again. Like
God bless you guys. I'm like, I don't know if I could do a climber, but yeah.
It's just going to be so much easier.
We don't have
the trees.
Yeah, we don't have straight
trees.
trees out here, so
Very
that doesn't
seldom
exist
do we have
out
a tree
here.
that'll work.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the trees you guys get in out there, and I'm like, man, like I was in one in Illinois where it was like the size of my leg, and like I'm like blowing around up there, as like the one day it was like the guy said there was a 180-inch buck behind me walking, and I'm like shaking, but there's no wind, but yet the tree's shaking because I'm the one shaking.
Well, they
it.
do.
Yeah.
Then there was another one came out, and I'm like, he saw me because my silhouette was like around the tree, and I'm like, well, I tried grinding to him. He was with the other doe. He doesn't care about me. But yeah, so now back to Code of Silence again. Sorry, we got rabbit hole. There it is.
There's always one, no matter what.
There's at least one. So okay, so the windproof.
Windproof. Yep.
Or worse, wind resistant. I don't know if there's a proper terminology for that or not.
It's funny. I think there's a varying definition of what windproof is. I think everybody generally agrees that if it stops the wind and you feel like it's done an adequate job, that's windproof. And I agree with that. Some people say if you can't light a match and hold a match on behind the fabric with a 40-mile-an-hour fan on it, it's not windproof. And I think sufficient is good enough. And we try to skate that line. I mean, because we're so motivated by breathability,
right.
And so we crowd it. We probably lean a little bit too much to breathability at times, but I would rather, I guarantee you that breathability issues and perspiration buildup will send you home before the wind will. So it's a tie in places, but unless it's blowing 50, you won't feel like any of our garments are not satisfactory, I guess, for wind. And if it's blowing 50, it sort of goes back to the rain. Are you really sure you want to be out there?
Yeah. At that point, if it's 50 miles per hour, I don't think I would even be out there. No, maybe. I don't know. Depends. Depends if I'd be out there or not. I don't know. Depends if my daughter and my wife are away, and I might be out there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So the technology side of it, though, kind of going back to, laminated products with waterproofness, same thing with why people have windproofness or claim that is from a lamination in between.
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
And when you have a laminated fabric in between the construction, you're going to have that sound. So we don't have,
especially in cold.
For sure. Yeah. It gets worse in cold. Yeah.
You have that laminate too in there. I feel like you would actually, if the coldness got in, it would kind of keep it in there and like kind of make you kind of like have the freezer type mentality of like when a freezer gets cold on the inside, just stays cold after a while. So like it'll just keep your coldness in, if that makes sense at all. Maybe. I don't know.
Usually the laminate would be on the far exterior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
not
so
in between.
It doesn't get the benefit of body heat necessarily to keep it soft. Generally, keep it, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
But there's ways. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like all laminates are the same, and some of them do better in cold conditions than others. There's some that are just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And so if you pick some in the store and you go, oh yeah, that's great, and ripple it around, and and I'd say, hey, do you care if I go back and throw this in the refrigerator in your break room, buddy, and see how it does? It can change like you cannot believe, and obviously there's not much room for that in our world.
Yeah.
So
no.
Well, a lot of the windproofness, and I will say, out here in Western Nebraska, the testing of wind we can do pretty well. So
out there. Yeah.
Yes,
target rich environment for wind
is
testing
something we actually were just talking about.
So
here all the time.
You brought up layers too, the different layers you have. So before we get into light, because that's like the part I really am interested in.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those layers, because how many layers are really in this piece? Because like it said, it feels heavy, but yet also it's breathable at the same time.
So
So yeah, you're talking the Fairwinds one.
Yep, the Fairwind. Yep.
Amount of layers within there too, right?
Yep, there's 2 layers in that piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a Bass Merino. Yep.
We use that as a dynamic to control thermal efficiency. So in a general sense, our extreme cold garments are going to have way more layers built in than just like you would if you were going to layer garment by garment by garment. We do that inside the garment of layering within a layer. So some of our extreme cold garments have 5 layers, but more importantly, they have 4 air chambers in between those 5 layers. And I'll get this, if there's some physics guys out there, they're going to shake their head and go, no, he's not quite right. And that's fine. You'll get the context. But I think the math is if you have a single pane window, right? Mm-hmm. And the thermal efficiency of that single pane window is about X. If you take another single pane window, glass window, and you put that, just like most storm windows are, and you put that an inch away and you have an air layer, it goes up by like 40 times on the thermal efficiency strictly because of that air layer between the two. And the nature's best insulator, the world's best insulator we still know of is air. That's why everybody is striving for loft. That's how down's rated by its loft. The better down, most expensive down in the world, they take an ounce of it and they stick it in a test tube and they say it stands up 400 cc's or whatever it is. But it's not because fancier feathers get you, better readings. It's because the air in those fancier feathers get you better reading. And so we're very keen on providing as many air layers as are most needed to create the thermal efficiency in the garment. So heavier garments get more layers and more air chambers, and then vice versa, obviously, on the lighter weight stuff.
Yep.
So on this lighter weight, you said there's 2 layers in this.
Yeah.
So that means is there an air layer in here?
That one is,
Not
you would call it a single layer.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 2 fabrics.
Yep.
But that is built to be a shell garment, basically.
Okay.
Yep.
Of high performance, kind of, more versatile piece. It's funny. I shot some coyotes in that pant you have. Is that a pant or a jacket?
No, jacket.
Okay. I had the pant, the sister or brother program to that piece on at 7 degrees this year, and I was hunting coyotes. I had 2 base layers underneath it, but the same exact pair of pants I was with my son on September 15th to kill an antelope. It was 97 out.
Yeah.
So it's that shell is I wouldn't recommend either one. I mean, if a guy called me up and said, "Oh, I'm going coyote hunting in 7 degrees," probably not what I'd send him out to do, or 90 or 97 either. But the point is that is a shell piece that stretches, stops the wind, breeze, super quiet, and you can layer as you need to adapt to a million different conditions. So.
Yeah, I mean it's very, very high quality in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the air, I just want to get clarification on this. So like the air, to me, in my mind, it's kind of like, so you have that one layer, you have the air layer, and then you have another layer.
Yep.
The importance of that air layer would be like if you start getting hot, it then in turn heats up that air, or vice versa, it cools you down because you're getting hot.
I don't know so much about the cooling side. I think it works either way. That's the basis of insulation, right?
Yep.
I mean, it maintains the temperature of whatever the environment that you're trying to protect is,
mm-hmm.
Because of that barrier.
Yep.
The reason I brought that up is like all this stuff here, I have never heard on a camouflage podcast. Like it's mostly just talking about camo. So that's
we're a little geeky.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
We got some stuff we're gonna go. What are they?
And like
the
light one is probably the more sciencey part to it, because I saw the video of like you and Jamie looking at the light absorbency of like leaves and bark and all that kind of stuff, and doing it to your camo, and I was like, I never saw this before with a camo company. So like that's okay. So now we're gonna get into the important part. But first, before we get into that, Code of Silence, where that, like the name, obviously you have to be silence, right? Like you have to be.
It did. Yeah. But silence having a little bit of a dual meaning too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, how really this came about, there was the concept of auditory, right? Silence. here, but also visual silence. And that visual silence is the, like, you were never there, right? So that is where that camouflage story comes into play. That is where the light absorbency story, which we'll talk about in a bit, comes into play. But Code of Silence is more than just being silent, like what we think, what we hear. There's other entities to being silent, which is like that you were never there concept in the woods.
That's honestly never even thought of that. That makes a ton of sense, though.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. So now, because the visual stuff, the light absorbency is extremely important, because I saw it for myself in the woods. Now, how did that come about, the light absorbency? And then we'll dive into like what it actually means.
Yep. It's interesting. I'll be honest. It wasn't like the top of the chart when we started the company. Even though I had some experiences, as I talked about with the deer that, I call the prick. I mean, that's what you said when he saw you. You went,
Yep.
And he was an amazing deer. And whatever was the bad side of camouflage clothing that deer could potentially detect, he was a freak at seeing that, understood what it looked like. And it didn't matter if I was 30 feet high, hiding behind a tree, wind blowing, snow flying, never sat there before. That deer would see me at 100 yards away. And it was, you can tell I'm probably starting to shake. I mean, it's still love the deer. Yeah. Never did get an arrow in him, and had to watch him kind of die on camera of old age. But just, really made me understand that there's a different science out there. But I can't remember exactly where I was going with all that. But anyway, it just, we had quietness and thermal efficiency probably above concealment. We knew we could do really well with the concealment side. I don't think we realized that we could bring a whole different level of concealment. Knew we could do better, absolutely, right. But didn't know we could, quote, change the game.
And I'll say personally, when we first had conversations where you reached out, and I'm a skeptic. I mean, I'm a natural science nerd too, and I'm like, I'll be completely honest with you guys. At first, I was like, "Oh, another camo company, cool," because we don't have enough of them, right? Like, I really wasn't. I was like, at this point in my career, like, you have to have something unique to even have my interest, right? And what sold me was not the camo pattern, was not all the stuff we've talked about, was this concept of light absorbency. And I was like, wait, let's talk more about that. And it really. And then when I got my hands on this gear and used it out in the field, my husband, everybody that we, hunt with, the same story, like you said, is like, how did I get away with that? It's game changing, this concept of light absorbency, which we call neutral LR, our technology. And it is
LR being light reflectance.
Light reflectance. Yep. So, we say the word absorbency and reflectancy is their inverse of one another, right? Like, it's where you're just not wanting to be shiny, right? You're not wanting to stand out and it be reflective. So focusing on fabrics, the way that we jacquard knit, dye at the yarn level, everything that's purposeful, meticulous in how we develop products, all supports that high light absorbency, because nature naturally isn't reflective, naturally organic. Yep. So that is what changes the game here. And that is what people, and like when we had initially talked on the phone, is like, how are we not speaking of this? And even the years you'd even said of developing camo, you're like,
how did I miss it?
How did I miss it?
Yeah. So mad at myself I didn't invent sticky notes.
Fair.
Either too. So
it's that glue. It's that glue that made the difference.
So I had all these yellow things sticking all over my tape back in the 80s.
So when you just said about the light and the shininess and all that kind of stuff, I never really even thought about it until we talked on the phone, and then I looked at another piece of garment I had, and I'm like looking down when I'm sitting like in a light like this, and I'm like, I'm shining right now, like without even like really noticing it. Like, you're not going to notice it like if you're just sitting in a room with a bunch of people, but like I'm looking down, I'm like, I'm shining, and then like right now I'm looking at this and like I don't see the same thing happening with this I mean, this is fluorescent light, so it's not like it's natural light, but it's not shining here. So like I never really even noticed it before with any of my other clothing in general. Or so how did you get rid of that? Is like, walk us through that of how you got rid of that.
A lot of it is the choices of the fabrics that we use. And, as Ev said in the beginning, where we don't, screen print on very flat, highly synthetic fabric, like that's where you get, and this is something I'm going to digress just for a second, me being a newbie, right? And I'm very passionate about newbies coming into this industry. So like the welcoming environment, like forget I was that, but like, have built my legitimacy, want to welcome more people in, right? And this is something that we don't, how would you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was initially the gal that wanted, and I still am, I wanted to look good. Like, and I cared about what it looks like on the retail floor. Like, hey, that's cool. I like to match. Don't judge. Like, but I'm going to be very honest here. And I cared more about what it looked.
That's
what do we
normal
call it?
human behavior.
Yes.
That
like,
is not, you want to.
That's just, I didn't really
be
stop
consistent
and
with
think.
how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. And you're like, that looks cool to me. Now, I never stopped and said, is that going to blend in? Is the deer going to tell what that looks like? Like you more were focused on what that look was. And a lot of the camo or a lot of the products out there today are very nice screen printed, to your point, too, Ethan, where you're saying very, very focused, not dull, like very fine when it comes to the edges of these patterns. And that looks nice to us. And it's like, that misses the whole point of it blending in nature. Yeah. And sorry, I digress.
Possibly. Yes, technically you could do both, but
fair. Yep. And that's where that is why when we talked about this being like a little bit more dull or a little bit more, however you want to use which adjective to describe our pattern, it's intentional. And that's where that light absorbency story, highly textured, it's not screen printed. We're using organic fabrics that are, because nature is naturally organic anyway, helps with that blending in more.
Yep.
How would you add?
No, I think you said it really well. I want to get into the exception piece in a second. For sure.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. No, say that. Here's another way to think of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's if somebody said, hey, I only want to listen to 1 minute of this conversation. Listen to this minute. Okay. Because this is important, not whether you buy Code of Silence or not. I think it's important as a hunter.
Yeah.
To understand. And again, I'm not trying to be the smart guy, but this is an absolute fact. You can Google it. This isn't Ev talking, but your eyes do not see, and deer's eyes do not see. Their brain does. You take in, as a human being, you take in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of more images subconsciously than you ever make yourself study and become aware of. And so when you're driving down the street, you're seeing houses, mailboxes, cars, maybe whatever. There's a kid all of a sudden standing on the side of the road, and it's 100% attention. You have seen every single thing that you've driven by, but your brain has not called conscious attention to any of it. And it's no different in the deer. If deer walk through the woods having to study every object, try to find the hunter or find the coyote or find the bobcat, they'd starve to death. They rely on their brain to find exceptions. That's why they see movement. That's why, and the exception can be color. It can be light reflectance, total visual signature. It can be an object, as you said earlier, standing on a silhouette of a tree, but somehow it has been filtered by the brain. Google, it's called sensory filtering. People call it sensory gating. And I'm surprised. I learned about this late in Code of Silence, and the no pun intended, the light went off with me. But said differently, if a army group of snipers, if a group of police snipers in Denver called us up and said, "Man, we love your camo. Would you build it for us?" I'm like, it may be exactly opposite of what you need. If you don't want to get noticed, in a reflective world, you might be better off to have highly reflective clothing because you're a non-exception. at that point.
Because you won't
And
stand
so-
out. That's
exactly.
the norm. Yep.
And so the reason absorption works in the woods is because everything else around it absorbs light.
Yep.
Yeah.
The trees absorb light. They're 100% organic. They're 100% porous. They're 100% textured, you know, and they have a visual signature. And to take a polyester fabric that's flat, that has a completely different visual signature, and think it's going to be a non-exception, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
And I just did a post on this, and this is a great way to think about it. And I think a lot of, you know, turkey hunters can relate, but, you know, everybody's taken a turkey decoy and they've thrown the fan away. And they put a real fan in it because a turkey relates 10 times better to a real fan because of the visual signature of that fan.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think a turkey can't tell the difference between a fake polyester printed fan
Flat,
and a
yep,
real
no
fan,
intimate- yep.
but a deer somehow could care less whether it's bark or a printed fabric, you're missing the whole point. So that's really the premise of Code of Silence concealment.
Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense about how the
Sorry to
brain.
go off. I'm like,
No,
you get
It makes complete. It
Yes.
makes sense. Like I think I never really I never heard someone say like that about the brain. The brain sees what it's supposed to see.
the
No.
brain hears. The brain.
Yeah.
The brain does everything.
You take the brain out, and there's nothing there.
The brain
right.
smells, and
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's just like you and you. You know, if you got in my truck, you'd probably go, you know, may not stink, but it has an odor to it. I can't even notice that.
Yep.
I go in my house every day. I go in and the deer like that in the woods, you know,
Mhm.
they don't smell that. Oh, that's a tree. Oh, that's a, you know, rock. Oh, that's a swamp. They're just like you and I. Their woods smell like whatever. And when they smell something different,
not
that's when
normally
they
there.
get full attention to
Yep.
them. Same with I used to hunt deer behind this feedlot, and the guy blared Ozzy Osbourne music as loud as he could, trying on a speaker, trying to calm his cows down. And there's
Ozzy to calm cow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Who knew?
and there's 170-inch deer walking 50 yards from that speaker just because they hear it every day.
Yeah.
You know? And so anyway, I think it's all about being a non-exception.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, when you think of it that way, when you think of like entering your house, you know, we always take scent really highly when we go into the woods. Like we try and, you know, limit the amount of scent we take in there from either a gas station or whatever. Like
Sure.
you try and limit it as much as possible. But like it is true. Like you walk into your house, my wife's burning a candle, or she has some kind of fragrance thing going off, and I'm like, I don't like that smell because it's new, right? It's new and you're not used to it. You go into the woods, you're entering that deer's house. So automatically,
Exactly.
like you said, the brain isn't going to like, oh, that's a tree, that's a flower, that's, you know, whatever. What is that? That's new. That's not supposed to be in my house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly it.
It's like light bulb, like you said, light bulb moment right away. It's like, wow, that makes complete sense.
Well, it's like, you know, probably covered this, but you know, it's where movement is. We can all relate to that.
Mhm.
Why you get picked off when you move is because you're an absolute exception. You know, if it's windy and everything's moving around and you move, you may not get seen because you're a non-exception. You know, you're just you don't stand out. So
The one thing I heard in the one video you guys have, Jamie, it might be your husband who says it, or no, it was someone else who said it in there about, you know, if you take your eyes off a deer and you see him, you might look back and you might not find that deer again. I forget.
Yeah. Darren said that with a deer. Yep.
yeah.
The coat of a
I was
deer.
like, that's so true, because that happened to me numerous times before, where it's like, I'm like looking at a deer and like, I feel like if I take my eyes off that deer, I'm going to lose it, because it's like, I found it once, I might not find it again. There was two doe like in a really thick patch. I'm like looking at them. I'm like, I look back and I have no idea where they are. It takes me like 10 minutes to find them again until they start moving. And that was in relation to like the light absorbency and the dullness of your camo blending into everything else around you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, when you're up in a tree stand and you have a doe underneath you or a buck or whatever, one you're not going to shoot, and you take your eyes off of them and you're like, where'd she go? And
Mhm.
you know, all of a sudden she flips her tail and stuff. She's right there, and it's the exact same principle. And deer aren't camouflage for the most part. They're pretty brown, and if not entirely brown, and crazy how hard they are to find them as an exception, as I say. So yeah.
Is there anything else with Code of Silence that you want to add in that we didn't ask? Anything that's they should know, listeners should know? I mean, we know because we have it right here, but like what should they know that we didn't cover?
The thing is, and kind of going back to what I was talking about with Cabela's in the early days, and the kind of the inspirations I had of passing savings on. If we get one kind of raised eyebrow the most, it's about there's no way you guys can be as good as what you say you are with your pricing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, if we charge you more, if it make you feel better, but it's definitely, some of our garments to me, they're not cheap. I would never say, oh, this one's only $200. That's still a lot of money for an average guy or average gal. But it would, to me, compare really favorably to stuff that's $350, $400. And we take a lot of pride in what we call direct to hunt. Is kind of a term we have out here. We design our own camo, we design our own fabrics, we design our own garments. We do everything we can. We're shooting our own videos. We don't have, yet, a big marketing team, but we're highly vertical to build the best garments we can as cost effectively as we can and pass on that savings. And
I say
we don't have to think about that. That's just the way we're kind of naturally that way anyway. So.
Yeah. That true value concept, that was a big deal in our old world. Resonates with us strongly. And I'm a big advocate of, leveraging people's strengths. We're a small and mighty team, but have strengths in a lot of areas, but able to do the things we can do and pass those savings along just because of our experience. And I'd say one of the hurdles, though, that we do have is to what you were alluding to of you see this garment at this price, and then you see this garment at this price, and you're like, well, this one's more expensive, this must be better. And it's like, that's not the case. And here we are trying to break that. I would believe the same thing, well, wait, if that's more expensive, then that's got to be better. That is not the case with us. And that's something where I'd say it will take time to, word of mouth and really just trying our gear. If for any reason you're not satisfied with it, you'll be talking to us. Give us a call, and we'll get you taken care of. Again, that goes back to, we pride ourselves on customer service. We pride ourselves on making good quality products at a fair price, and ultimately wanting to solve the problem that honestly has existed in this industry of building stuff that keeps you warm, so you can stay out there longer, blends in better, and it's quieter. We got you covered. So we are.
Love it. We love the camo. You guys,
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We enjoyed having you guys on and hearing all about Code of Silence and our little rabbit hole to go down. Obviously,
always.
You got the full story for sure.
I love the full story. Love it.
Cool.
Love it. Where can people follow you guys at and go buy some product?
So social, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's Code of Silence Gear. You can go to our website at codeofsilence.com. And we do have also on our website, we do have some wholesale partners that great partners that we have. We really, try to target those mom and pop shops, those higher, archery shops, pro shops that really care about their customers having high quality products. Those are our guys. So you can see our stuff in some of those, stores and visit us online.
There is one in PA. One. I forget. I looked it up the other day and I was like, no idea where that's at.
We're growing.
It's funny. Every time I think we have a lot of dealers and stuff, and they're growing. And then I look at our map, and there's literally 2.5 state areas where there's not a star yet, and we're working on it. So
it's above Harrisburg, above Dauphin County, I want to say.
Okay,
but it's on this side of the river, so it's up there a little bit. Like, yeah,
A little bit.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And at this point, 1-2 hour drive. It's like nothing. It's
No,
like
it's not a 2-hour drive.
no, not.
It's like maybe hour and a half.
Oh, that's nothing.
If you push it, maybe an hour.
Yeah, that's an afternoon. We're
Who's
fine.
driving?
That's just an afternoon here. That's fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Remember, everyone, the deer can win, but not with Code of Silence.
Yes.
I just came up with that one.
There you go. Be
remember-
bland.
Remember,
Keep fishing.
enjoy the freaking process. See ya.